Chris Gardner is a man who lives the American dream. He shook off the restraints of a deprived and abusive childhood and periods of homelessness as an adult to become the founder of a multi-billion-dollar stockbroking firm that serves the institutional market. And perhaps not surprisingly, this made him the subject of a Hollywood film, The Pursuit of Happyness, based on his autobiography. Chris Gardner is in the studio with us. Welcome, Chris. It's lovely to meet you.
Oh, it's lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
Now, Chris, the film in which Will Smith stars took a number of liberties about your life, but is the essence accurate?
I could not be happier with the portrayal, the depiction, the storytelling. I could not be happier. And I was on the set every day for 17 weeks of filming. And Will asked me to be there, so I couldn't be happier.
And I believe you had a cameo in the closing moments of the film.
Wasn't that awesome?
I'll have to go back and look at it again. Now, the title of your book and then of the film, The Pursuit of Happyness, what to you, in your mind, is the relationship between happiness and wealth?
I think that's a relationship that a lot of us are going to need to be exploring at this point in all of our lives, because a lot of folks are finding out that money does not necessarily make you happy. Stuff does not necessarily make you happy. And for me, it was never about money.
Even then, at the time,
no,
you were struggling
it was
so
never
hard.
about money. It was about two things. Number one, giving my son something I never had, which was a father, which is priceless. And number two, becoming world class is something that I truly felt passionate about. So the money was never a big deal for me. It was all about those two things. Breaking the cycle of men who were not there for their children, and becoming world class is something that I truly loved. And I've been blessed in that regard.
So let's just look at your childhood. You had a stepfather who was abusive to you and your mum. There was sexual abuse involved. It was a battle for you to become literate. Looking at all of that, what was the most significant achievement of your life?
Making sure that my son and my daughter never say, I never knew my father. That's the most important thing in the world to me.
Was it difficult for you to break from the emotional bondage, to be a different person? Not what you'd seen growing up, but to be the person you wanted to be?
No, because I saw two different things. I saw my stepfather, and I could have become him, but I also saw my mom. And I embraced the light that I saw in my mom. And that's what made all the difference in my life.
Was she your motivating factor?
Still is. Still is. Mom moved to heaven 16 years ago, but I still talk to her every day.
But despite her circumstances, she could also look beyond her circumstances and impart hope into your life.
Oh man, it wasn't just a matter of hope. It was a matter of the fact that she had seen too many of her own dreams denied, deferred, and destroyed, but she instilled in me that I did have the right and the responsibility to pursue things that made me happy. And I got that from right here, and that became part of my DNA. It was never an option.
How does one break the cycle of poverty?
The first thing is, we need to break the cycle of men who are not responsible for their children. That is absolutely the first thing that we have to do. All these other cycles can be traced back to the fact that too many men, and something I've learned very important at this point in my life, there are many ways that a father can be absent. There are children who live in multi-million-dollar houses that do not know their fathers. He's there physically, but emotionally, he's not there. Until we break that cycle, all these other cycles will just continue to perpetuate themselves.
So how did you do that in the film? And I know in reality your son was about 14 months old at the time when you were working long hours.
Yes.
How were you able to impart love and to demonstrate acceptance to him in that time?
I showed him every day. When we finally did the Oprah Winfrey show, Oprah asked my son, what was the one thing that you remember about this time in your life? And what he said made my soul smile. What he said was, all I remember is every time I looked up, my father was there. That was it. I mean, that's half the battle, was being there.
Yes.
That's all he remembers about this time in his life.
So you had him there in subway, toilets, you had him under your desk at work.
I took him to work,
He was with you. Now, Chris, I remember reading that there were times at night you were pushing your son in the pram, you were destitute, and prostitutes would come to you and give you money to help you.
Those ladies of the evening helped us tremendously because they began to give us $5 bills after we would not accept candy. They gave us a $5 bill, and that $5 bill allowed me to feed my child. And to this day, the ladies of the evening are all right with me.
Indeed, yeah. So that was what you were battling with in your private life. But if we look at your career, you got the internship at Dean Witter, as depicted in the film, although some of the finer details are slightly different. From there, you went to Bear Stearns, San Francisco, New York City. And then you decided in 1987 to establish your own business, the current business you have, Gardner in Chicago. Why that decision?
Because I kept getting fired. And you know what? Let me say this. When I sold my stock in Bear Stearns to start my own company, there were people who told me, "You're crazy. You're crazy. You're selling your stock. It'll never happen." And you know what crazy is? Crazy is the fact that I got more money for selling my stock 24 years ago than they got when they did the deal with JP Morgan. That's crazy.
Does it break your heart looking at what's happened?
For me to see what's happened to Bear Stearns, it's been like watching the house you grew up in burn, and there's nothing you can do about it. It has been absolutely devastating. I lost no money, but sometimes it's not about money, it's personal.
Now looking at Gardner, you decided to serve the institutional market. Now in the South African context, that's a tall order, it's very competitive. How tough was it for you?
It's still tough. It's still tough, but the truth of the matter is this is a great time to be building a business. One of the things that I stressed to my team a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, is that we will not participate in the recession. What that means is turn your television off, stay focused on our core business, which is adding value to our clients. We continue to make the investments in technology that we need to be consistently competitive, and this has been a great time to be adding talent to your team. I know for a fact I've signed employment agreements with people who 2 years ago wouldn't have talked to me because they were big shots at places that don't exist anymore. All right? So this is a great time to be building a business, and I'm tremendously excited about that business. I'm also very excited about doing things here in South Africa.
I'd love to hear more about that. There's a rumor that you're putting together a private equity deal in South Africa.
A rumor.
Is it fact?
We have been working with Pamadzi Investment Holdings on raising a fund that's going to invest solely in South Africa. And I've got to tell you, we're about to plant the flag. I could not feel better about where we are at this point in time.
What would that mean for South Africa?
Well, just beyond our fund, I have been telling people for a long time that South Africa is about to become the Hong Kong of Africa. And there's going to be, if you look at the numbers alone say, in 2000, there was $9 billion in foreign direct investment in all of Africa. In 2008, that number's turned into $62 billion. And the first port of call is South Africa. Some guys at Walmart probably agreed with me when they decided to make the acquisition that they've recently announced.
Sure. But do you see it as a stepping stone onto the rest of the continent?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, but right here. And people have asked me, well, what about this place and that country and this place and this country? I know how to do one thing at a time. That's how I've been successful. I do one thing at a time. Do we see opportunities in other parts of the continent? Yes. But the truth of the matter is, let's get this one thing done.
And looking at the deal in South Africa, what are the particular business opportunities?
Well, again, I cannot comment specifically on sector-wise, but I can say this. If you just look at the continent, you're going to look and see infrastructure, retail and wholesale, consumer businesses, and technology that my numbers say by the year 2020, those four industries will be generating close to $3 trillion in revenue. That's exciting.
Yes.
And you cannot be in business any place on the planet and not be taking a serious look at Africa right now.
Chris, I believe you give away 10% of your firm's profits.
I've given away too much money.
Do you continue to do that? And how important is that in your success?
Well, you know what we've continued to do with the Chris Gardner Foundation is we want to support things that are about education and creating opportunities for people that normally they would not get a chance to achieve. And we've seen some things here on the continent that we've made commitments to that honest to God make a difference in people's lives right here, down here on the ground, where you can really see a difference made. And those are the kinds of things we will be continuing to support throughout the continent.
Chris, thank you for visiting us. Good talking to you.
Thank you for having me.
Chris Gardner is from Gardner Rich.